Hello, this is Father Bill. I'm at St Boniface Church again. And the saint of the week this week is St Boniface. He's known as the apostle to Germany. He actually was born around 675 AD and somewhat of a well-to-do family. And of course, at this time in Ireland and England, the monastic life was really taking off, very popular. It fit kind of the clannish way the Irish and English were. So Boniface was born in England, and he, at a young age, went to the monastery and started practicing the monastic life. And then he really got into it, did well. He became a teacher, kind of a scholar of sorts, of Latin and other things. And he was kind of in line to take over when the head guy, called the abbot, we call it an abbey. The monastery was called an abbey, so the head guy was an abbot. It's kind of like a bishop or something. When that abbot died, then Boniface, whose actual English name was Winfrid, everyone was like, oh yeah, you're the next really great guy, you're going to take over. But instead, Boniface had become ordained a priest at age 30 in the monastery. But instead, this is like 716 AD, instead, Boniface has this urge to go over to Europe and be a missionary. So he could have taken the head honcho's job at the monastery, and that was somewhat comfortable. He was comfortable being a monk, but he had this urge to go be a missionary. So one thing we have to mention is different types of martyrdom in the early church years. So first was red martyrdom. That was when you shed your blood for Christ. You became a martyr. Under the Roman Empire, that was in play for a couple centuries. Then there was white martyrdom. When Christianity became legal, the idea was you would leave the Roman cities that were becoming somewhat corrupt, and you would go out into the desert, pray, fast, kind of live as a hermit. And that led to a bunch of these hermit-type people. There were men and women that did this. They were called the fathers, mothers of the church, a lot of them. But at some point they banded together and said, hey, we're all trying to live this kind of life of fasting, prayer, nothing ostentatious, really serve God, take care of the poor. Why don't we band together? So monasteries kind of grew out of that. But the third type of martyrdom was green martyrdom, which meant you were in, say, Ireland or England, Scotland, great monastic life, great time in the church, like the 5th, 6th, 7th centuries, and you left that comfortable life that you were familiar with and went to Europe, the green fields of Europe, to re-evangelize what was going on in Europe. And you may know that after the Roman Empire kind of fell apart, this was around 500 AD, then a lot of the pagan tribes came through. A lot of the, unchurched kind of tough people, they came through, and most of us are descended from them, the French, the Germans, the Irish, and so on, the Saxons. So those people came through and took over Europe, and so these monks said, we have to go back over to Europe and evangelize them. So Boniface took part in that. He, 716, instead of taking over the monastery, he went over and he went to Frisia, and a lot of his time was always between different political groups fighting that he had to work around, but he did great things. One of the things he did that was really interesting, he was over there in Germany, and they worshipped, I think it might have been Thor, but also known as Jupiter. And they had the sacred oak. So it was like, don't touch it, don't mess with it, or the god, Jupiter, pretty powerful, will kill you, hit you with lightning or something. So what does Boniface do? He's like, oh, really? He gets the axe and he starts chopping down this big tree. And he chops it down, and the pagans there are like, wait a minute, he didn't get killed? God didn't wipe him out? They were amazed, and it led to great conversions. So Boniface had that kind of courage to go against what was going on at the time. So his name was Winifred, but when he went to the mainland of Europe, he went to Rome to see the Pope, and the Pope named him Boniface after some other martyr, and sent him out and said, you're in charge of all the German lands. So he, instead of having a regular diocese with the main city, it was like all these Germanic lands that needed united and whatever. He's in charge of that. So he took it on, and at the end of his life, he did great things. He brought a lot of people to God, founded different monasteries, churches, and so on. And at the end of his life, the story is the Pope offered him one diocese he could go to, be a bishop, kind of retire, have a nice cushy life. He said, no, I want to go back. When I first came, I was trying to convert the Frisians. I didn't have a lot of success. I want to go back to that part of Germany. So he goes back there, and a mob of angry pagan type people attack him, and he gets killed and becomes a martyr. So what do we take away from St. Boniface? Well, one thing is not to be comfortable with the way things are, not to look for comfort. He was comfortable being a monk, probably really enjoyed that whole life, but when it was time to go be a missionary, he let go of that and went to Europe. Whatever hardships or difficulties were going to come on, toward the end of his life, when the Pope's like, hey, you're older, why don't you just retire and have a nice ending to your life? He's like, no, I want to go back and evangelize the Frisians. So we have that sense of this hunger for souls, and that's when Jesus on the cross said, I thirst. A lot of people say, yeah, he thirsted because when you get tortured like he did, your water, all your ability to have water and all that runs out, and you're really thirsty physically. It's a painful thing, but also deeper thirst is a thirst for souls. Some people talk about that. Somebody like Mother Teresa, St. Boniface, they had the thirst for souls. Couldn't stop moving until they brought more people to Christ, and so that led to his martyrdom. So he's a great saint. He's revered in parts of England and really in Germany. He's the apostle to the Germans, so they have festivals, they celebrate his life. Good example for us not to get caught up in looking for comfort. Instead, look for what is God's will to lead us into a fuller, richer life. So we hope that we can ask St. Boniface intercede for us in these trying times. God bless.